April 5th, 2022. Moscow, Russia. It's early morning when a 30-year-old IT specialist named Dmitry Pavlov checks his phone and sees something that makes his blood run cold. The servers he's been maintaining for the past 7 years, servers that host what authorities will later call the largest criminal marketplace in history, have gone completely dark. Simultaneously, in an upscale Moscow apartment, another man, Stanislav Moiseyev, is staring at the same horrifying reality. The platform he built from nothing, a digital empire that once processed over 1.3 billion in illegal sales annually, has been seized by German federal police. But here's what's truly terrifying. While most of the world is just waking up to news of Hydra's shutdown, thousands of drug dealers across Russia are already panicking. Their product, worth millions of dollars, is hidden in public parks, buried in snow, tucked behind dumpsters, in dead drops across dozens of cities. And now, with their marketplace suddenly gone, they have no way to tell their customers where to find it. This isn't your typical dark web story. This is the tale of Hydra, a Russian criminal marketplace so sophisticated, so massive, and so uniquely different from anything that came before it, that it made Silk Road and AlphaBay look like amateur operations. And its rise and fall would reveal a dark web empire built on a business model so brilliantly adapted to Russia's unique criminal landscape that it changed illegal drug commerce forever. Hydra, Russia's $5 billion dark web empire 2015, Moscow, Russia. While Western darknet markets like Silk Road and AlphaBay were revolutionizing online drug sales by shipping packages through the mail, Russian criminals faced a unique problem. Russia's postal system couldn't be trusted. Mail surveillance was extensive, customs inspections were thorough, and the risk of arrest was simply too high. But someone had a brilliant, terrifying idea. What if you didn't need to mail drugs at all? Enter Hydra, named after the mythological multi-headed serpent that grows 2 heads for every one you cut off. The marketplace launched quietly in 2015, but it wasn't trying to compete with Western markets. It was building something entirely different. Hydra's innovation was deceptively simple: the dead drop system. Instead of mailing drugs, vendors would hire local couriers to hide packages in public locations across Russian cities. A drug buried in a park, cocaine taped under a park bench, methamphetamine hidden in a hollowed-out tree. Buyers would browse Hydra's marketplace, select their product, pay in Bitcoin, and receive GPS coordinates, sometimes accurate to within meters. They could then walk to the location, retrieve their drugs, and walk away. No face-to-face contact. No mail trail. No border crossings. The system was ingenious. If police found a dead drop, they couldn't connect it to anyone. The courier who placed it was long gone. The buyer hadn't arrived yet. And the vendor? They were safely behind their computer screen, sometimes hundreds of miles away. The dead drop system solved Russia's drug distribution problem so effectively that Hydra's growth was exponential. In 2016, Hydra processed just under 10 million in transactions. By 2020, that number had exploded to over $1.3 billion. Yes, billion with a B. By 2021, Hydra accounted for an estimated 80% of all darknet market-related cryptocurrency transactions worldwide. Not just Russian markets. All markets. Globally. At its peak, Hydra hosted 17 million customer accounts and over 19,000 active vendors. daily sales regularly exceeded 600,000 euros. The marketplace had more listings, more users, and more transaction volume than every other darknet market in history combined. But Hydra wasn't just a drug marketplace, it was a full-service criminal ecosystem. The marketplace hosted over 250,000 active listings at the time of its shutdown. Drugs, yes, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, synthetic opioids, everything imaginable. But also false identification documents, Russian passports, driver's licenses, residence permits, all customizable with the buyer's photo and information. You could literally buy a new identity. Stolen financial data, credit cards, bank accounts, cryptocurrency wallets. Want to drain someone's account? Hydra had vendors who could help. Hacking services, professional hackers for hire, who would break into email accounts, social media profiles, or corporate systems. Just specify your target and pay the fee. Money laundering services. This was perhaps Hydra's most sophisticated feature. The platform offered integrated cryptocurrency mixing and cash-out services. Criminals could convert their Bitcoin into rubles, euros, or dollars through a network of money launderers who made the transactions look legitimate. Hydra operated like a legitimate tech company because, in many ways, it was one. The platform charged vendors a 2 to 4% commission on every sale, generated millions in cryptocurrency transaction fees, and even required vendors to pay bonds before they could start selling. The marketplace had customer service representatives who resolved disputes between buyers and vendors. They had a 5-star rating system where buyers could review products. They had search filters, product categories, and recommendation algorithms. From a user experience perspective, Hydra wasn't just better than other darknet markets, it was better than many legitimate e-commerce platforms. 2019. FBI Cyber Division, Washington, D.C. American law enforcement was watching Hydra's meteoric rise with growing alarm. While the marketplace primarily served Russian-speaking customers, its money laundering services were being used by criminals worldwide. Ransomware operators would use Hydra to clean their Bitcoin. International drug trafficking organizations would route payments through the platform. Even terrorist financing investigations were discovering connections to Hydra's cryptocurrency wallets. But investigating a purely Russian-language marketplace posed unprecedented challenges. Most FBI agents couldn't read Cyrillic. Russian law enforcement cooperation was minimal at best, and Hydra's operators had built their infrastructure with paranoid attention to security. The breakthrough came from an unexpected direction: Germany. Blockchain analysts at the German Federal Criminal Police, the Bundeskriminalamt, or BKA, discovered something crucial. While Hydra's operations were Russian and its customers were Russian, its servers were located in Germany. This was Hydra's fatal mistake. The operators had chosen German hosting services because they were reliable, professional, and technologically sophisticated. But that decision meant German law enforcement had jurisdiction. The BKA began quietly building a case. Every Bitcoin transaction was traced. Every server location was identified. Every cryptocurrency wallet was cataloged. March 2022. U.S. Treasury Department, Washington, D.C. While German police were preparing to seize Hydra's servers, U.S. investigators were uncovering another crucial piece of the puzzle: Garantex, a Russian cryptocurrency exchange that was helping Hydra launder its profits. Garantex wasn't a darknet service, it operated openly, presenting itself as a legitimate crypto exchange. But blockchain analysis revealed a shocking truth. Over $100 million in illicit transactions were flowing through the platform, including massive amounts from Hydra vendors. The exchange was providing a critical service to the dark web ecosystem. Criminals would send their Bitcoin to Garantex, which would mix the coins with legitimate transactions to obscure their origin, then allow withdrawal in clean cryptocurrency or conversion to fiat currency. Garantex was effectively a money laundering machine operating in plain sight. US Treasury analysts traced Garantex transactions back through the blockchain, identifying ransomware payments from the notorious Conti gang, which had extorted over $180 million from victims worldwide. Drug trafficking proceeds from Hydra vendors, stolen cryptocurrency from exchange hacks, proceeds from fraud operations across Eastern Europe. The scale was breathtaking. Garantex had processed over $2 billion in transactions since its founding in 2019, with a significant portion connected to criminal activity. Meanwhile, FBI agents were making progress on identifying Hydra's key administrators. Through painstaking blockchain analysis and server log examination, investigators identified Dmitry Olegovich Pavlov, a 30-year-old Russian IT specialist running a company called Promservice Ltd, also operating as all-wheel drive and 4x4host.ru. Pavlov had been Hydra's server administrator since November 2015, essentially from the marketplace's beginning. He maintained the infrastructure, kept the servers running, and ensured the platform stayed online even as law enforcement pressure increased. But Pavlov had made the same mistake as so many cybercriminals before him. He hadn't anticipated that server logs, payment records, and digital communications would eventually connect his real identity to his criminal enterprise. March 2022. BKA headquarters, Wiesbaden, Germany. German federal police were preparing for one of the most significant Darknet takedowns in history. But the timing had to be perfect. Hydra's administrators could destroy evidence with a few keystrokes. Vendors could abandon their dead drops if they suspected law enforcement action. And cryptocurrency could be moved to unrecoverable wallets in seconds if anyone got wind of the operation. The plan required simultaneous action across multiple fronts. German police would seize the physical servers in German data centers. US Treasury would sanction both Hydra and Garantex, freezing cryptocurrency assets. International warrants would be issued for known administrators. Blockchain seizure operations would secure cryptocurrency wallets. Everything had to happen at once. Early morning, April 5th, 2022. German federal police arrived at multiple data centers simultaneously. Within hours, they had seized Hydra's entire infrastructure, every server, every backup, every piece of hardware that kept the marketplace running. At exactly the same moment, the US Department of Justice announced criminal charges against Dmitry Pavlov for conspiracy to distribute narcotics and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The US Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, simultaneously announced sanctions against both Hydra and Garantex, effectively cutting off their access to the international financial system. The cryptocurrency seizures were massive. 543 bitcoins, worth approximately $25 million at the time, were immediately frozen. Within minutes of the server seizures, Hydra went dark. Users trying to access the marketplace found their screens replaced with seizure notices from German federal police. 17 million users suddenly lost access to their accounts. 19,000 vendors lost access to their inventory listings and Bitcoin wallets. Millions of dollars in pending transactions vanished into the digital void. But the chaos was just beginning. Across Russia and Eastern Europe, thousands of dead drops containing drugs were now orphaned, hidden in parks and public spaces, but with no way for buyers to receive the GPS coordinates to find them. April 15, 2022. Vologda Oblast, Russia. Dmitry Pavlov was attempting to leave the Vologda region when Russian police intercepted him. In a rare moment of Russian cooperation with Western law enforcement, Pavlov was arrested on domestic charges related to drug trafficking and organized crime. He became the first person criminally charged in connection with Hydra's operation. During interrogation, Pavlov claimed he had no idea what Hydra was being used for, that he simply provided hosting services and didn't monitor what clients did with their servers. It was a defense that investigators found laughable, given the 7 years he'd spent maintaining infrastructure that openly advertised illegal drugs. But Pavlov was just the infrastructure guy. The real prize was Hydra's founder. For years, law enforcement had been trying to identify the individual or group who originally created Hydra. The marketplace's administrators used pseudonyms, encrypted communications, and complex operational security. The breakthrough came from old-fashioned detective work combined with digital forensics. Russian investigators, following money trails and analyzing years of communications, identified their target, Stanislav Moiseyev, a Russian entrepreneur who had built Hydra from nothing and overseen its transformation into the world's largest criminal marketplace. Dmitry Pavlov remained in Russian custody while US authorities sought his extradition. The charges he faced in American courts carried decades in prison. However, Pavlov would likely never see an American courtroom. Russia rarely extradites its citizens to the United States, particularly for cybercrimes. He would face Russian justice instead, which, given Russia's treatment of cybercriminals who operate against domestic targets, promised to be severe. December 2nd, 2024. Moscow Regional Court, Russia. In a stunning development that shocked the cybercrime world, Russian prosecutors brought the full weight of the justice system against Stanislav Moiseyev and 15 of his key accomplices. After a lengthy trial, a Russian jury found Moiseyev guilty of organizing a criminal community, large-scale drug trafficking, and operating an illegal narcotics distribution network. The sentence? Life in prison. It was an unprecedented moment in Russian legal history, one of the first times a cybercrime kingpin received a sentence typically reserved for serial killers and terrorist leaders. Moiseyev was also ordered to pay a fine of 4 million rubles. His 15 accomplices received prison sentences ranging from 8 to 23 years. But here's the thing about Darknet markets. They're like that mythological Hydra that gave this marketplace its name. Cut off one head and 2 more grow back. Within weeks of Hydra's shutdown, multiple successor platforms emerged, all fighting for dominance in the Russian Darknet ecosystem. OMG Market launched with aggressive marketing, claiming to offer improved security and the same dead drop system that made Hydra successful. Blacksprut appeared with sophisticated technology and promises of better vendor support. Mega Darknet Market attracted vendors with lower commission rates. Wayaway and Kraken Market both positioned themselves as the true Hydra successor. By February 2023, blockchain analysis showed these 5 successor markets had collectively recovered about 50% of Hydra's former market share. The dead drop system had proven so effective that no one wanted to abandon it. Here's what's truly concerning about Hydra's legacy. The dead drop system it pioneered has spread far beyond Russia. Law enforcement agencies are now discovering dead drop operations in Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and even spreading into Eastern European countries. The model is being adopted by drug trafficking organizations who realized that eliminating postal trails makes their operations nearly impossible to investigate using traditional methods. In Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine, reports indicate Russian soldiers are using telegram channels and dead drops to buy drugs, a dark evolution of Hydra's business model adapted for active war zones. But while the marketplaces can shut down and restart under new names, there's one thing criminals can't escape: the blockchain. Every Bitcoin transaction Hydra ever processed remains permanently recorded. US Treasury analysts and blockchain forensic companies continue tracing Hydra-related cryptocurrency, identifying vendors, money launderers, and customers months and years after the platform's shutdown. In 2025, Garantex itself was hit with additional sanctions and criminal charges against its founders. The crypto exchange that helped Hydra launder billions had thought sanctions would be the end of it. Instead, it became the beginning of a criminal prosecution that is ongoing today. As of 2025, critical questions remain unanswered. How much cryptocurrency from Hydra's operations remains unrecovered? Estimates suggest only a fraction of the $5.2 billion that flowed through the marketplace has been seized or traced. How many of Hydra's 19,000 vendors successfully transitioned to successor markets? Are they operating under new identities, or did the shutdown actually disrupt their criminal enterprises? And most importantly, can law enforcement ever truly win against an ecosystem that can resurrect itself within weeks of any takedown? Hydra's story represents something larger than one marketplace's rise and fall. It demonstrates how quickly criminal enterprises can adapt to technological opportunities and geographic constraints. The dead drop system, Hydra's greatest innovation, solved a uniquely Russian problem, but it revealed a universal truth. When criminals can remove physical evidence trails, traditional law enforcement tactics become nearly useless. Stanislav Moiseyev sits in a Russian prison, serving a life sentence, a harsh reminder that even the most sophisticated cybercriminals can eventually face justice. Dmitry Pavlov awaits his fate in Russian custody. Garantex founders are indicted and on the run. But somewhere in the encrypted darkness of the Russian Darknet, new marketplaces are processing millions in daily transactions. New vendors are hiding drugs in parks across Moscow, St. Petersburg, and dozens of other cities. New administrators are learning from Hydra's mistakes, building more secure platforms, developing better anonymity techniques. Hydra may be dead, but its ghost haunts every law enforcement agency trying to combat the dark web. Because Hydra didn't just run a marketplace, it pioneered a criminal business model so effective that it changed illegal commerce forever. The $5 billion question remains: in the endless evolution of darknet markets, who's really winning?